As you know, I've been here last 3 days, well, 2.5 days. I was in the UN General Assembly before that. I will, in my opening remarks, basically focus on the Washington leg of the visit. If there's anything you have an interest on the New York side, I'd be happy to answer that as well. Here, of course, my primary meeting was with my counterpart, Secretary Blinken. So I met him yesterday afternoon. Before that, in the morning, I had gone to the White House to see National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Then I met USTR Catherine Tai. So those were the three cabinet level meetings I did yesterday. Today I did two meetings, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. I've just come from Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo. I also spent time with American business. Yesterday US ISPF had organized a meeting. Today US IBC had done one. Each one was on a different focus. Today's was more on defense. Yesterday's was more on technology. This morning I spoke at Hudson. I think some of you were there at Hudson Institute. I had a chance yesterday evening to meet some members of Congress. I mean, these are busy times, as you all know. But members of Congress, some business people. Tomorrow I will be meeting the community. So that's broadly what's been the meetings. Now, just to give you a context, this year, of course, I think the big event, still in a sense, the determining context is our Prime Minister's visit. So a lot of what we've been doing since then has been to realize the various agreements and understandings that were reached. So a lot of our discussions was in that stock taking to assess the progress, to see what is it we should be doing more, where is it that there has not been the progress matching expectations. We hope now to take that entire process forward into the 2+2 meeting, which will take place a few weeks from now. So we look forward to welcoming Secretaries Blinken and Austin to India. So that's been broadly the range of activities here. And I'm sure you would have some questions. I'd be happy to.
Since we have limited time, what I'm going to do is starting from Lalit, and we'll go each one.
Well, I don't know if I would use the term deadlock. I think you would have heard me speak about this matter, I think the first time in CFR in New York, today at somewhat greater length at Hudson. The issue is as follows, which is that the Canadians have made some allegations. We have pointed out to them that this is not Government of India's policy, but if they are prepared to share with us specifics and anything relevant, we are also open to looking at it. So in that sense, that's where the matter stands. But what we do not want to see is an incident treated in isolation, because then that somewhere does not convey the right picture. The fact is that we have had an ongoing problem with Canada and the Canadian government for some years now. And the ongoing problem really revolves around the permissiveness in regard to terrorism, extremism and violence. And this permissiveness is also reflected in the fact that some important extradition requests have not been responded to from their side, in the fact that there are individuals and organizations who are clearly involved with violence and illegal activities in India, who themselves declared it. I mean, it is not a secret. And that they continue to carry on with their activities in Canada. And most important, the fact that our diplomatic missions and our diplomatic personnel have been consistently and continuously intimidated in Canada, to a point where today it is not safe for them really to carry on with their work. I mean, obviously, the fact that we've had to temporarily suspend our visa operations, I mean, it is not something we would have liked to do. It is just that they have made it very difficult for us to operate those services, because our personnel are today insecure. नहीं, देखिए, जो एक तो जो सिख कम्युनिटी जो है, अगर उनके आप ही खुद जानते हैं कि पिछले 10 साल में उनके जो मुद्दे जो हैं, उनके विषय आप जानते हैं कि पहले वो ब्लैक लिस्ट की चर्चा होती थी और बहुत सारे लोग थे जिनको लगता था कि वो खुद अपने देश जा नहीं पा रहे. अब उनके इतने सारे मुद्दे जो हैं, कुछ जो हैं कौम के मुद्दे हैं, कुछ व्यक्तिगत मुद्दे हैं, तो उन पे मोदी सरकार ने जितना समय बिताया है, जितना ध्यान दिया है, जितना उसके जो अलग अलग सुझाव निकाले हैं, आप भी जानते हैं, मैं भी जानता हूँ. अब जो हुआ है और अभी जो चर्चा जो हो रही है, ये जो है, मैं नहीं मानता कि एक किस्म से पूरे कम्युनिटी के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव इश्यूज हैं. ये जो अभी जो आतंकवाद की बात करते हैं, जो अलगावादी लोग जो हैं, जो हिंसा माने जिनके तर्कों में ये हिंसा की बात आती है, तो मुझे लगता है कि ये बहुत एक माने छोटी सी माइनॉरिटी है. और उनके लिए जो है, जो हमारी सरकार, जो यहाँ की सरकार, कनाडा की सरकार, उनको माने एक किस्म से निष्पक्ष तरीके से देखना चाहिए और जो उनका जो रिस्पांस होगा वो होगा. तो आप इसको नहीं लीजिए कि ये कहीं एक पूरे कम्युनिटी का विषय, वो उसको माने गलत तरीके से एक किस्म से आप पेश कर रहे हैं. No, look, you know what has prompted Canada to approach this issue in that manner. That's not, you know, how can I sort of analyze it and attribute reasons for it. It's something they know why they've done it. Our point is this, that there is today a climate of violence, an atmosphere of intimidation, activities. I mean, just think about it. We've had, you know, smoke bombs thrown at the mission. We've had our consulates, you know, sort of violence in front of them. Individuals have been targeted and intimidated. There are posters put up about people. So tell me, do you consider this normal? I mean, I mean, for a moment, okay, this is about us. If this had happened to any other country, how would they react to it? I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Let's not normalize what is happening in Canada. You know, what is happening in Canada, had it happened anywhere else, do you think the world would have taken it with equanimity? If it had happened to any other country, would they have taken it, you know, so calmly? So I think, you know, it's necessary to call out what is happening there. And our point is this, look, I mean, there may be an individual incident. Yes, if there is an incident and there is an investigation and there are allegations, there are processes involved in it. I mean, nobody is disputing that. Our issue is to somehow say that what else is happening is par for the course. That, it's quite okay for freedom, because there's freedom of speech, to make threats and intimidate diplomats. I don't think that's acceptable.
Mr. Minister, two quick questions. How much of an issue is this Canada problem in your bilateral relations with the US? Would you say the problem has been managed or set aside? How would you characterize it? Number two, the attack on the consulate in San Francisco. Nobody's been arrested. So would you say the problem is similar here as it is in Canada? And why are the Americans moving?
Look, again, you are asking me for explanations of action or lack of action on the part of other governments. You should be asking them. If something happens in India or something happens for which Indian government is responsible, I'm perfectly willing to step up and answer that. But how do I explain to you that, a smoke bomb attack there or an arson attack here? Of course we raised it. So my point is this. I mean, what is the status? It's an ongoing conversation. Did we spend some time on it? Yes, I did spend some time on it. Did we discuss other things? Yes, we discussed other things. I mean, there are a lot of other, our relationship has many dimensions, many areas of cooperation. When we look at the world, there are convergences and intersections of interest where, we work very closely together. We're doing all of that. So I want to be fair. If something is discussed, I'm transparent about it. I have no problem saying, yes, we discussed it. But I don't want you to think that in the India-US relationship, there's only one issue. So I would say, yes, it's a conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. But in terms of, but again, I flagged here, as I have flagged to the Canadians as well, saying, we are a democracy. We don't need to learn from other people what freedom of speech is about. But we can tell people this. We don't think freedom of speech extends to incitement to violence. That to us is misuse of freedom. It's not a defense of freedom. And I always ask people one question. How would you react if you were in my shoes? If it was your diplomats, your embassies, your people, what would be your reaction?
Thank you for doing this, Reena Bhardwaj and I. We talk about the evidence that Canada at every level has been saying we have evidence, and have they shared that with the US? And did this really come out in the conversations with your counterpart in the US or with Jake Sullivan?
My understanding is the word used by the Canadians is allegation. So, you used a different word. I think the word they used was allegation. So, I've already, I think, answered it starting with Lalit, which is, we've always said that, look, if there is information, let us know. So, our doors, I want to make one thing very clear. It's not that our doors are shut to looking at something. If there is a requirement for us to look at something, we are open to looking at it. But, I then expect, somewhere, some pointer, something for me to look at. If I also read that the Sri Lankan president said something about AUKUS. Since the person who said it was someone else and the object of the remarks was someone else, I guess it's for them to sort out, isn't it? But with regard to the Indo-Pacific, I've been writing about it, I've been speaking about it. I'm always happy to elucidate further. Our view is that Indo-Pacific is in fact a very natural construct. There's a logic to it. It is in fact the Cold War era which separated the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. For those who wish to live in the Cold War, I guess it works fine to separate the two. For those of us who think we need to live beyond the Cold War, to take, to look at the world in more contemporary terms, we think Indo-Pacific is very rational. Now, if you see the last few years, it isn't just us and the other Quad countries. You can see that EU has an Indo-Pacific strategy. Individual European countries, I think Germany, France, Netherlands have it. The ASEAN has an Indo-Pacific outlook. So I guess a very large part of the world is buying into the Indo-Pacific.
और ये टर्म जो है बहुत समय
नहीं, बट वो देखिए वो तो हमारी मजबूरी थी
जी। हाँ जी, तो उसी में एक जो टर्म पाकिस्तान के साथ कभी यूज किया करते थे वो लोग कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्डिंग मेजर्स, क्या ऐसे कोई मेजर्स हमारी मिनिस्ट्री से वहां पे कम्युनिकेट किए गए हैं, या जैसा आपने कहा कि एक्सट्रेडिशन जो रिक्वेस्ट है वो फुलफिल नहीं, तो किस तरह की चीजें आप देखना चाहेंगे कनाडा की तरफ से जो रिलेशन है वो शायद नॉर्मल हो पाए उसको लेकर?
नहीं, देखिए एक तो है कि अभी जो माहौल है ये ऐसा माहौल है जहां हमारे राजदूतावास, वहाँ हमारे उच्चायुक्त खुद, हमारे कॉन्सुलेट्स जो हैं वहाँ वो एक किस्म से उन पे ये दबाव है, उनके खिलाफ जो है हिंसा का प्रचार कर हो रहा है। तो उनकी जो नॉर्मल जो एक्टिविटीज जो होनी चाहिए वो इस माहौल में जब ये साफ दिखाई देता है कि सुरक्षा का एक किस्म से विषय है, तो ये वो कैसे जो है वीज़ा का काम या ऑफिस जाने का काम या जो उनकी जो जिम्मेदारियां जो हैं उसको वह कैसे निभाएं इस माहौल में, ये विषय। तो ये कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्डिंग वाला विषय नहीं है, ये लॉ एंड ऑर्डर वाला विषय है। ये वियना कन्वेंशन के तहत जो भी हर देश जो है उसकी जिम्मेदारी होती है कि जो वहाँ जो राजदूत और राजदूतावास में जो काम करते हैं कि उनको काम करने के लिए सुविधा दिया जाए और सुरक्षा दिया जाए। तो आप इसको द्विपक्षीय नहीं बनाइए, ये माहौल भारत में नहीं है। तो इसमें ऐसा माने ये नहीं है कि उनका भी कसूर है हमारा भी कसूर है। अभी जो भी हो रहा है, जो बिलबोर्ड्स हैं, जो सोशल मीडिया पोस्टिंग जो हो रहे हैं, जो प्रदर्शन जो हो रहे हैं, जो धमकी जो दिए जा रही है, वो कनाडा में। तो उनको जो है अपने यहाँ जो कार्रवाई करनी चाहिए उनको करनी चाहिए। दैट इज योर प्रिजम्पशन। Yes. So you are citing a report. So by asking me to comment, you are assuming that I share your... we did not discuss press reports. And our conversation was not based on what appeared in the press. So the conversation had a real basis based on the relationship of the two governments to each other.
So, a related question, then. How do you see this thing sorting out? How do you normalize? How does this thing normalize? Go back to things like that?
You know, look, there are, I mean, in a way, one of the problems is no incident is isolated and no incident is the totality. You know, there is a context for everything. There are multiple problems out there. So I guess in the case of individual incidents, we'll have to, you know, see the concerned governments will have to talk to each other and see how they, you know, sort of take it forward. But there is a larger issue, and I think it's important that the larger issue should be flagged. And the larger issue is this permissiveness that I have spoken about. Because, look, a lot of Americans are astonished. If we tell them, which by the way most Indians know, if in India it will not come as a surprise to anybody if you tell them, there are people in Canada who are advocating violence, who are advocating separatism, there is a history out there. All Indians know this. I suspect very few Americans know this. So in a way, a lot of what I said at the meetings, I think was new to the Americans. I mean, today, in my talk at Hudson, I actually made the point that when Americans look at Canada, they see something. When we in India look at Canada, we see something else. And that's part of the problem. So it's also important that we, talk it out with the Americans. After all, they are very close to Canada. They are good friends of ours. So it's important that they also have, accurate picture, that they have our point of view on this matter as well. So look, again, I'm not prejudging issues. I'm not taking absolutist positions. What we have taken is a very reasonable stance. But, it should not be that the entire debate focuses on issue 1 and issue 2 and the bigger picture which has been going on for some time and which is a very serious picture. After all, I was thinking back, when was the last time that any of our missions was, intimidated to a point where it could not continue with its normal functioning? I'll really have to think back. And if someone says this could happen in a G7 country, in a Commonwealth country, it gives you a lot to think about.
In supporting developing nations.
Just so that I put my own position to you accurately, my recollection of what I said was that at the G20 summit, the reform of international financial institutions was addressed in some detail. There's still meetings of the finance track which have to take place. So, given the fact that there are 2 months still left in our presidency, my expectation is that there could be more things happening on this track. It is not India is doing it. This is a collective effort of the G20 as a whole. So your first question, do we actually have faith in MDBs? What are the role? Absolutely. I mean, I think they are the only realistic game in town. If you actually look, where will, we speak today of taking sustainable development, achieving the SDG goals, sustainable development goals. We talk about resourcing green development. We discuss how do we build digital public infrastructure, especially in developing countries. Now, somewhere, if we have an ambitious plan or a great aspiration, but we have not addressed the resourcing part, then it remains what it is, which is an aspiration, a dream, an idea to be realized. And in a way, it undermines the seriousness of what we're talking. So therefore, for us today, the resources become a very, very crucial issue. And we do think today that the only global solution to resources are actually international financial institutions. There is the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. In this respect, the World Bank more actually have a very unique standing. I don't think any other institution really compares with them in terms of their scale, in terms of their effectiveness, in terms of their track record, and in terms of the credibility to expand and make an impact on all these issues in the world. So I'm not saying that there are no other alternatives. There are, and we are part of some of them. But I think we need to, take a very objective view of the relative weight and the relative influence of various institutions out there. And I put it to you today that, how to expand the capital base of the World Bank and how to make it more active and effective and work in a different way, in a better way. I think it's a very, very important question. No, look, your first question has a subtle or not so subtle assumption with which I disagree. So, for me, there have been acts of violence in Canada, and the issue of acts of, to me, the real consequence of the acts of violence is really to heighten the awareness about the nexus today between separatists, between extremists, between people involved in trafficking of people and organized crime. So I think that's really where your impact question should be directed at. So if you're asking me, are there other centers of crime in other countries? Well, I don't know. I mean, that is, the workings of terrorists, extremists, and organized crime is something which, I'm not quite sure whether they go by replicating examples. On your issue of the trade pillar, I think there's an ongoing discussion right now between the American system and ours with regard to IPEF. I do not know if I have anything specific at this point of time to share with you on the trade side.
Prashant?
On the first one, what are the American? The Americans. I saw what the Americans have said, and I think hopefully the Americans have seen what I've said, and I think both of us have articulated our respective views. So I really don't know beyond that what is it I can add to it, because there wasn't anything in the conversation there by which I could further embellish this particular point. With regard to Bangladesh, I'm trying to remember. During this visit, there was no sort of focused discussion on either Bangladesh or Myanmar. I don't think Myanmar came up at all, to the best of my memory. Bangladesh may have been mentioned in passing, though I'm not sure I would entirely concur with your characterization about where we are and where they are.
So we've gone through one session, so let's have a program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Z News.